Welcome to the deep dive. Okay, I want you to picture this. It's the end of 1970 in Norway.
Right.
The location is Isdalen, which translates to Ice Valley. It's this rugged area just outside Bergen, and it has such a dark history that it's got this nickname, Death Valley.
And it lives up to the name. On November 29th, a hiker and his two young daughters are out, and they find something among the rocks that kicks off one of Europe's truly one of its most baffling mysteries.
They found the charred remains of a woman.
That's right. She was lying on her back, her face completely unrecognizable from the burns, which were all over the front of her body. Her clothes were basically gone, and her hands were clenched up in what's called the boxer position.
Which is it's a grim detail, but it's a physiological response to extreme heat, right? But it means she was alive when the fire started.
It does. And this wasn't just some accident. Not at all.
The scene itself felt like a statement. It was a statement about someone's, or maybe multiple people's, just meticulous need for total anonymity. Every single identifying mark had been, surgically removed.
She was erased.
Literally erased.
And that, for you, is really our mission today. Our sources lay out this life that was lived under at least 8 fake names, with movements that seemed to intersect with Cold War military secrets, and her death. The method is so complex it points in 2 directions at once. Desperate suicide and professional assassination.
It's that central contradiction we need to unpack. The calculated moves of a professional spy versus the just bizarre circumstances of her final moments.
Exactly.
So let's start right there at the scene, because it wasn't just a body, it was staged. Investigators called it ceremonial.
It does sound theatrical, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Around the body, they found this collection of items: an empty bottle of St. Halvard liqueur, a couple of water bottles, a matchbox, a purse.
And other personal things like boots, a watch, some jewelry.
Yes, rubber boots, a watch, 2 earrings, and a ring were all there.
But wait a minute. If the goal is total eradication, why leave the jewelry? That feels like a contradiction right off the bat.
It does. But here's the detail that just chilled investigators. Every single one of those items, the clothes, the boots, the bottles, had been stripped of any identifying information.
You're kidding.
No. Labels were cut out, brand names were rubbed off. They even found a fur hat under her body that had traces of petrol on it.
So, an accelerant. It was planned.
The intent was absolute. No identification. Period.
That level of cleanup, that suggests, incredible professionalism or just extreme paranoia. But the forensics on her body tell an even darker story.
The autopsy was a shock to the team. The official cause of death was this combination of things. First, incapacitation from phenobarbital.
Sleeping pills.
A lot of them. Between 50 and 70 phenyl sleeping pills. And that was combined with carbon monoxide poisoning. The soot they found in her lungs was the definitive proof. She was alive and breathing as the fire started.
70 sleeping pills, and then you set yourself on fire. That's more than suicide. That's a ritual to ensure you're never, ever identified. Not even by dental records.
Precisely. And to make it even stranger, investigators found 12 more pills just lying next to the body, as if they were placed there.
And what about the bruises on her neck?
Well, they noted bruises, yes. Could have been from a fall while she was drugged, or it could have been a struggle. We just don't know for sure. But what is certain is that this was a violent, prolonged death, whether she did it to herself or not.
So the scene is completely scrubbed, but 3 days later, the police catch what they think is a break.
They find 2 large suitcases just left at the Bergen railway station.
Which is classic tradecraft, right? If you want to disappear, you ditch your heavy luggage at a transit hub to buy yourself some time.
Exactly. And the contents of those suitcases, well, they just ramped up the intrigue. Inside, they found multiple wigs, makeup, clothes.
And I'm guessing all the tags were cut out of the clothes.
Every single one. Plus maps, train timetables, and a mix of different currencies. Belgian, British, Swiss, Norwegian.
The Deutschmarks they found sewn into the lining, though. That's not tourist money.
No, that's operational funding. Or, deep emergency cash. It all points to a life of planning, of high stakes. The wigs, the currencies, the hidden money. It's all for concealment and flight.
But amidst all that careful planning, there's one thing that just seems like an unbelievable mistake. A pair of sunglasses.
And on those sunglasses, police found a partial fingerprint.
Wow.
And they matched it to the woman. Think about that for a second. A woman goes to these extraordinary, painful lengths to erase herself, with fire and pills, and by scrubbing her belongings clean, only to leave behind the one thing that can positively identify her: a fingerprint.
Let's just pause on that. It's 1970. How good was the science that they could even get a match from a burn victim?
It's actually a really remarkable piece of police work for the time. Remember how he said her hands were clenched in that boxer position?
Yeah, in a fist.
That likely protected the fingertips, the delicate ridges, from the worst of the heat. It allowed them to get a clean enough print to compare. But the question remains, was leaving that print a mistake on her part, or was it left by someone else who staged the whole thing?
So with that fingerprint and the suitcases, the police suddenly have a trail to follow. And the most valuable thing in there wasn't the cash, was it?
Not at all. It was a notepad filled with these cryptic entries.
Her travel log.
It turned out to be her travel log, yeah. The police managed to decode it as a list of dates and cities she had visited. And by checking those against hotel check-in forms all over Europe, they started to uncover the scale of her ghost trail. She was constantly moving through Paris, Oslo, Trondheim, Stavanger.
And using at least 8 different high-quality fake passports and aliases.
8 of them.
Oh.
Think about the expense and the connections you'd need to get 8 convincing fake identities in 1970s Europe.
We're talking names like Genevieve Lancière, Claudia Tielt.
Alexia Zarnamer-Chez. And every single time, she'd claim to be Belgian. But the addresses she gave were always fake. I mean, this just screams professional operation.
It points to a life that's just defined by secrecy, by constant movement. She's doubling back on herself. She's always paying in cash. It's the classic pattern of someone who can't afford to leave a paper trail.
Either a high-level criminal or, a state agent.
And the people who met her, they noticed how strange she was. The staff at the Hotel Horteheimen, which was her last known location, said she was always on guard.
She would change rooms constantly after checking in. In one case, she moved 3 times during a single stay. It's like she thought she was being watched.
And then there were the sensory clues. She was described as well-dressed, attractive, spoke a few languages, German, Flemish, some broken English, wore wigs.
But the detail that always stands out is the smell. Multiple witnesses mentioned a strange scent, often described as garlic or spices.
So for a supposed spy, she was actually pretty conspicuous.
Incredibly so. Which brings us to the context of the time. You have this professional ghost, who for some reason smells strongly of garlic, moving around Europe in 1970.
Right in the middle of the Cold War.
Precisely. And her travel log, once decoded, placed her in very sensitive locations. Locations that lined up directly with top-secret tests of the Norwegian Penguin missile system.
That was a huge deal, a joint U.S.-Norway project. So she wasn't just randomly traveling.
Not at all. The places she visited, especially around Stavanger, were right next to the testing grounds. There's even a report from a fisherman who saw her near the testing area watching military movements.
And talking to a naval officer, this wasn't a tourist trip.
No. And that's why the Norwegian Intelligence Service, their domestic agency known as POT, they immediately launched their own separate secret investigation. They suspected military espionage from the get-go.
The compromise of a major NATO program would be a much bigger deal than a mystery suicide.
Way bigger. And that official secret investigation is what really fuels all the cover-up theories, isn't it?
Absolutely. There was that claim that came out much later, in 2005. A local Bergen resident said he saw her alive just 5 days before the body was found.
Right. He said she was walking on a hillside, lightly dressed, and ahead of 2 southern-looking men in heavy coats. And the witness claimed a police acquaintance later told him to just, quote, forget about it.
Which suggests the intelligence services were trying to put a lid on the whole thing.
It certainly implies that. So let's try to pull this all together, because the evidence pulls you in 2 totally different directions.
Okay, so on one hand, you have a woman found drugged, set on fire, identity completely erased, multiple high-end aliases operating near a top-secret missile site during the Cold War.
Which leads you to Theory A intrigue. She was a professional agent or maybe involved in organized crime. The evidence is just overwhelming for this side.
Yeah.
The 8 fake passports, the coded log, the hidden cash, her proximity to military sites. It's all classic tradecraft.
And the organized crime theory is interesting, too. She could have been a drug runner. Maybe that explains the barbiturates or part of some international fraud ring.
It could explain the travel costs and why those men she was seen with never came forward. And there's that new development from 2023, suggesting a link to François Genoud, a Swiss banker with Nazi ties who is funding all sorts of international groups. Her travel did overlap with his.
But then you have theory B, the human tragedy.
The counter-argument, that she was just too sloppy, too conspicuous to be a real spy. I mean, changes rooms 3 times and smells of garlic on a covert mission. She was, and I'm quoting here, the world's worst spy.
And from a clinical perspective, her behavior, the paranoia, the wigs, the constant moving, these frantic efforts to hide, it all mirrors the symptoms of an acute mental health crisis.
Like paranoid schizophrenia or severe delusional disorder, yes. And the method of death itself, that massive overdose plus self-immolation, it feels highly ritualistic. A desperate attempt to fulfill a paranoid delusion of being hunted, to finally disappear for good. It's a pattern we see in other cold cases, where a huge mystery just hides a sad personal truth.
So after 50 years, what has modern forensics told us about the woman herself?
This is where it gets really incredible. Investigators had the foresight to preserve her teeth and jawbone in that zinc-lined coffin she was buried in. Decades later, scientists could do stable isotope analysis.
And how does that work exactly?
In principle, it's pretty straightforward. The water you drink and food you eat when you're a child leaves a unique chemical signature in your teeth. Things like strontium and oxygen ratios. It's a permanent geological fingerprint of where you grew up.
And what did her fingerprints say?
It was incredibly specific. She was born around 1930 near Nuremberg, Germany. But as a child, she moved to the border region between France and Germany, so that confirms her complex European roots.
And her dental work showed she traveled a lot as an adult, too.
It did. The types of fillings and procedures she'd had suggested travel to East Asia, Central or Southern Europe, maybe even South America. And later DNA analysis traced her maternal line back to a haplogroup from Southeast Europe or Southwest Asia.
So we know where she was from, we know her ancestry, but we still don't have a name.
That's the ultimate paradox. The official verdict back in '71 was suicide, even though the investigators themselves had private doubts. She was given a Catholic burial based on the saints' names and her aliases, and placed in that special zinc-lined coffin specifically so she could be easily exhumed for future testing.
And that foresight paid off, but it still didn't solve the core mystery.
It got us closer, but her name remains elusive. The case was formally reopened in 2016 because, well, the incredible effort she put into disappearing demands a better answer than just suicide.
So what does this all mean for you as you're listening to this? We are left with this stark, chilling unknown. Was she a desperate, mentally ill woman who used every ounce of her being to obliterate herself? Or a highly trained agent who either botched her last mission or was silenced by the very people she was working for?
She spent months, maybe years, living a life that was designed entirely around non-existence, scrubbing every tag, using 8 names, and finally using fire as the ultimate act of anonymity.
The commitment is just staggering.
So given that staggering commitment to erasure, why was the clearest piece of evidence, that partial fingerprint on the sunglasses, just left behind? Was that the single biggest mistake in an otherwise calculated life of secrecy? Or is it the ultimate sign that her final moments in Death Valley were not entirely under her own control? It's a compelling question to carry with you.